Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what is going on? This is Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and I am not sure what I just saw. I don't know what we just watched, what we witnessed. It was incredible. The Pittsburgh Steelers come back from 24-7 down to beat the Indianapolis Colts 28-24 in Week 16 at Heinz Field. Maybe, I think it was, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, was that not the largest comeback victory for the Steelers in the Mike Tomlin era? I think I saw that somewhere. Huge win. The Steelers clinched the AFC North. It was the best Christmas gift I could have gotten. Phillip Rivers gets sent home crying. I hope they don't make the playoffs. I hate that guy. And on top of all that, it's like the Steelers have some signs of life. It's almost like they're Are they back? I don't know. Bryan, Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's up, Bryan? How you doing?
Bear with me, guys.
Oh, boy. That's good.
All right. I'm awake. And that was a hard slap. I just had to make sure that I was not dreaming because this is not the Steelers that I've watched in most of December. So I am feeling pretty good on the anniversary of greatness, and we'll talk about that more later. But yes, I'm feeling awesome. My face hurts, but my face hurt when I accidentally got punched in the face during the AFC Championship game in 2008 when accidentally, we'll see, but when Troy Polamalu caught that big touchdown, that big interception for the touchdown, so I had to do that. I got to tell you, woo, and thank goodness.
All right, Dave Schofield, the other co-editor. What's going on, Dave?
I tell you what, Brian's face hurts because people saw him, and people usually hurt when they see my face. But anyway, I'm so happy to be here. It was very interesting. I don't know about the rest of you all that may or may not have been able to get the game in your area. It was kind of ridiculous how it was around here, but we're running a little bit late because it's my fault. I had to do some traveling in order to make sure I witnessed this game, but I don't think I'm ever going to be allowed to witness or to watch another game in another location because
Dave was at my house. He came to my house to watch the game. I don't know why you don't say it, Dave. He came to my house.
No. I was waiting for you to say it. No, but I've been at Jeff's house twice to watch games this season, and it was the last two victories the Steelers had, Jacksonville and the Colts. But man, tale of two halves for kind of both teams. I guess we'll break it down. I don't have to break it down now. This is great. People want me to slap myself. I'm like, I don't want to break my glasses again like I did the last podcast.
Hold on a second quick. Honey, did we get an invitation from the Hartmans to come over to that? No?
I didn't either. I just showed up and said, let me watch a game.
Just like Brian's birthday party last year. Anyways, let's go to
You were invited.
No, Single Dog 88 gives us $2. Who finally gave Ben a shot in the butt in the second half? Big Ben in the second half compared to Big Ben in the first half was absolutely night and day. We'll get into that today. Varys Lovett gives us $4.99. Says nice freaking win. Big Ben finally didn't look. I don't know what the emoji.
That's an old man.
Okay, very good. Didn't look old. Yeah. Okay. Eddie B gives us $2 Canuck bucks. He says, "Are we back to heart attack wins?" I don't care if they're heart attack wins at this point. I'll take heart attack wins over what we've seen the last 3 weeks. Leo C gives us $4.99. He said first half was painful. Benny, where are your Jets? Tomlin call timeout. Ben, question mark. Second half long ball, really the key to open up the rest of the offense. It's always been the key to the rest of the offense, in my opinion. They have to be able to have the threat, the vertical threat. And they did that. But I want to go through some knee-jerk stuff. I do want to say that, I pulled out all the stops for this game. I really did. My jersey, if you notice, this is not the usual crest that you see on the uniforms. I went back to my old school Reebok authentic jersey. I'm a superstitious guy, okay, first and foremost. So I had worn the same Nike jersey, Roethlisberger at home, because I wear the black when they're at home and I wear the white when they're away. And I was like, you know what? The Steelers, we need a jump start here. And I know I'm not the only superstitious guy because Alan Faneca put out on Twitter, he goes, I'm not saying it was I did it, but I did change seats at halftime. So what's I'm going to say? So I'm sure I'm not the only person out there that did something different, but I did rock the 2005-2006 authentic Reebok, and this sucker's not coming off anymore because the next time they play at home will be in the playoffs. Bryan, did you do anything special?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I did not shower before the game. So at halftime, I showered, and I missed the first Colts drive, and I came back and I'm like, nuts. So I went back and I watched it, but I made sure I put on my jersey and this Super Bowl 40 shirt that I've been wearing for most of their wins. But I put on this jersey, a new one, number 85, and he caught a touchdown pass. So I think me cleaning up and was really what needed to happen. So a fresh bad helped the Steelers win.
Dave, I don't think you did anything different, right? You were just pretty much status quo. You had your color rush Hayward, nothing new, nothing different. There you go.
You know what? I did almost the exact same routine from the last time I came to the Jefferson house to watch a game. I mean, seriously, I did almost everything exactly the same. I even had, last time I even had to make one quick stop to drop off something. I didn't even really need to do that. And I did the same thing anyway. Went over, Jeff had me sitting in the exact same chair.
Yep.
I did not, anything they offered me to eat, I said no, because I said no to everything last time. And I'm like, God, this isn't working. I mean, this is terrible. It's 24/7. And then it was time to start to believe.
There you go. Real quick, Kyle Smith gives us $5. He said, today is a glorious day. I argued that the TikToks weren't a big deal, but Juju had his most yards after he stopped with the logos. Corvette. What is that Corvette about? I honestly saw the Bengals tweeting about that. I don't know. I haven't heard that. So if anyone sees that in the live chat, let me know what that's about.
I don't know either. Dave?
I don't know.
No clue. Really? You think I would know? Man.
My melanated scope gives us $1.99. Says the largest of Benjamins. Big Ben coming back in a big way. William Hall, $5 tip. Appreciate it. He said if we could put it all together, we can win the Super Bowl. Absolutely. Something Mike Tomlin talked about in his post-game press conference, he would not address whether the Steelers will rest any players next week in Week 17 against Cleveland, but he said he's anxious to get some players back. I'm wondering if a player like Robert Spillane or maybe even a Matt Filer might be on the mend and ready to be coming back for the postseason. Fingers crossed on that. Aaron Cummins gives us $5. Where was that offense in the second half, the prior 3 games? These are honest. Yeah. These are honest. I got to be honest. Like, I get a lot of, mentions on Twitter. People ask me questions a lot. I get that question more than anything else. And it literally, I have no answers. I have no answers whatsoever. And it boggles my mind. And Jeremy Smith helps us out. $4.99. He says, Corvette are the words in the song he always dances to. Okay.
I will have to watch the videos to know that.
And now it comes full circle. There we go. But the Steelers do win the AFC North. Dave, it's their 9th division win since the creation of the AFC North in 2002, correct?
If I counted right.
There you go. And
I miscounted.
And it's the last time. It's the last time since 2017, and it keeps the streak alive that no team has ever won the AFC North 3 years in a row. I won some money tonight thanks to those Raven fans I know that took me on the bet when I said, I bet you $20 the Steelers win the AFC North this year. And they said, I'll take that bet. All right, guys, let's get and perfect on cue. Nick Hancock, $5. Dilly. Amen, brother. Dilly. Indeed. Let's talk about this game. We break it down as we always do. We start with the offense and then we go over to the defense in part 2. Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, 34 for 49. I wish I had the split between first half and second half, but I don't have that in front of me. Throws for 342 yards, a 7-yard average, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Well, he was sacked one time for a 109.4 rating. Guys, it's the tale of two halves. We're going to be talking about that a lot. How do you grade BTR? What about you, Bryan Anthony Davis?
I'm going to have to just forget about the first half here when I'm giving grades.
Can you?
Yeah, well, I have his first half stats if you want it real quick.
Well, do that real quick before Bryan does, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
11 for 20 for 91 yards in the first half.
Okay, so he threw for 91 yards in the first half, 11 for 20, and then he finishes with 342. I think that was the number. 342. So, Bryan, you say you're not going to look at the first half. That's okay. That's fine. Go ahead.
You know what? He's not getting an A, but he's going to get a B. And the reason he's going to get a B is because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But sometimes when you start off poorly, I understand you don't have enough to finish. But I loved what I saw from him. I loved I don't know. I'm sure Randy's going to take credit for the play calling. Ben's going to take credit for the play calling. He's going to say, "Oh, I was writing up in the dirt," and Randy's like, no, he wasn't. I came up with that. Who cares? All I know is we've been crying for them to open things up. They started throwing the ball downfield. I hope they remember that going into more first halves. But here's the thing. One thing that stood out to me was the screen game to Connor. Mm-hmm. And the screen game really has been non-existent. So I love that more and more. I just felt like when they got that second touchdown, I thought, all right, here we go. It's on like Donkey Kong, and I really felt it there. I'm not going to be one that said, "Oh, I knew it all along that they were going to win." No, because one of our viewers texted me, and I said, "Man, if I had somewhere else if I didn't have to do this, if I didn't have to talk about this game, I'd be doing something else right now." That's how discouraged I was with Ben Roethlisberger and the entire team in the first half. But Ben really turned it on, so I want to give him a B.
And you just found out, viewers, that Brian Anthony Davis texts viewers of the show all the time. So if you want his personal cell phone number, hit up Dave Schofield at Super Steelers dad, father, son
of the year, Star Wars lover, AvengersRock.com
at gmail.com. Okay. Dave Schofield, what's your grade of BTR?
Okay. Hear me out.
I'm hearing.
It's going to be good when it starts with "hear me out."
He gets a 3.
A 3?
Yes. You remember back in, I don't know, you guys have kids where I don't know with the school that you guys go to, how they did the grading, but a lot of the times kids don't start to get letter grades or number or other things until they're a little bit further on in school. But early on in elementary, they give them you might not even have covered that area, so it'll be blank. You'll get a 1 if you're really deficient, or 2, you really need improvement. Then you have a 3 that you're adequate and you're making improvements. And then you've got the 4 where it's excellent and completely mastered. So I'm going with the 3. What Ben did while looking at the whole game, what he did the whole game was adequate, and what he did in the second half was make great improvements. So a 3 is that perfect grade for him.
We asked to give a letter grade, and you
didn't
can't
say
even
a
follow
letter
the
grade.
It's always been a letter grade. There's never been anyone on this show, whether you go back to when Lance Williams and I used to do it, has ever given a number grade in the grade section. But I
tell you what.
That's a Dave Schofield answer if I've ever heard it.
I get crucified when I go ahead with BJ Finney a couple of weeks back. But here's the thing. I love it. But if they would have lost that game, we would have killed Dave for that.
Oh, yeah. You're lucky they won. For me, I'm going to give him I think it's a solid B is fair. You can't ignore the first half. And I know I get Brian's justification of what he said, but in my opinion, you cannot ignore the first half issues. And it wasn't all Roethlisberger, but a large part of it was. But then he comes around in the second half and just completely looks night and day different. Huge win. I give him a B. Let's get some lives, super chats here before we move on. Varus Levitt gives us $3.99. TJ Watt definitely deserves Defensive Player of the Year. Hard to disagree. I think he had 2 sacks, forced fumble. That was a good game. We'll get to them in a little bit. Edward Drescher gives us $2. Said need Spillane. Avery looks like he's running in mud. Williamson, I think, is doing a fair job. You can't have him and Vince Williams. Like those are 2 guys that are not. They're too much alike. I think that you need someone else in there. But still, we'll get to that. Again, defense is in a little bit later. Steel Dog 88 gives us another $2. Ben's arm looked toast in the first half. What happened? Again, I wish I knew. I really wish I knew. Hillbilly Magnum 2017 gives us $5. Great second half Steelers on to the Super Bowl. Boy, it's amazing what a great comeback win will do for a fan base. John McCann gives us €5. I don't know what we're calling those. What will it take to keep Mike Hilton? I'll give you a quick answer. A lot of money. He's gonna get a payday, and he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. Machu Lau, who's always chiming in, he gives us $12.03. I love it. Well. Did that prediction tip last week really help? I think so. Congrats to the Steelers and Steeler Nation for winning the North, by the way. Check Juju's TikTok now. Team Corvette × 2. 1 not done. That's the slogan that's on the shirts, by the way. The AFC North Championship shirts say won, WON, not done.
Ooh, I like.
Not bad. It's not a bad saying. It's not a bad shirt. I like the Steel. We run the North. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
Getting bent with Bo. Good to see you again, Bo. He's a longtime viewer of the show. What WTF first half, LFG second half? If you don't know what those mean, Google them. And I agree, Bo. Absolutely, 100%. All right, let's get to the next player or players in the box score. We'll go down to the running game. What a story. What a stat line. Listen to this stat line. This Pittsburgh Steelers rushed 14 times for 20 yards. A 1.4 average. They do get a touchdown with a long run of 12. James Conner had that run. He leads his team in rushing 5 carries for 20 yards. Deontay Johnson, 1 carry for 2. Benny Snell Jr., 6 carries for 0 yards. Roethlisberger had -2 yards on 2 carries because of the kneel downs. Guys, what in the world did we witness in the running game? Oh my gosh. Bryan, grade the running game.
Do I have to? I got to give him a D+. I mean, I liked having Conner back there, but love the touchdown. But really, the big problem is when you've got first and goal.
Well, let's do it this way. Hold on, Brian. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to bring something up. You talked about the short passing game. James Conner did have 5 catches for 45 yards and a long of 10 on 5 targets. I wonder if we're grading the running backs, you can add that in there too. Just saying that.
All right, then I will go ahead. I like Conner in this game. I actually really did. I did not like Benny Snell in this game. Last week I liked Benny Snell in that game. So let's go ahead and change it to a C-. Okay. But I really thought here's the big deal though. When that game seemed lost to some when they did not go for the field goal. I'm glad they didn't go for the field goal, because if they go for that field goal in that situation instead of going for it on fourth and goal, I don't know if that comeback happens because of the way the defense stepped up and where they had the field position there. So that's ifs and buts and candy and nuts. I get it, but all I'm saying is when you can't get in from there, your running game is the one that's keeping you away from getting in those short yardage situations. And so the running game is still killing this team. They've got to find a way around that.
Dave, grading the running backs, a.k.a. James Conner.
All right, I'm going to give them a 1. No, I'm not going to give them a
You're going to confuse the heck out of people.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm really going to go with a D+, and it's not even as much of on the running backs themselves. Jeff, you said it perfectly during the game, so I'm going to say it and I'm going to lead it into you for you to say it. You're like, Benny Snell can do the things, some of the same things that they were trying to do with James Conner. They just don't. When they had Benny Snell in the game, like on the goal line when they didn't score and they're like sending him out wide on that thing, they don't use him. They're not going to throw him the ball there. And it's not that he can't, they just don't. But when James Conner's in the game, they will use him in that way. So you were saying that's a complete waste to have Benny Snell and split him out wide, because the Steelers have never, ever as far as I can remember in 2 years, ever thrown him the ball in that situation. So I was very strange how they were using their guys, and the Steelers were down. They needed to get back in this game. And once they were back in the game by throwing the ball when they had it on that last drive and they needed to get some first downs, it made sense for them to keep passing the ball, and they sprinkled in the run when they had to. And they did. I mean, they almost sealed it themselves outside of the 2-minute warning. So, but it wasn't the run game that got them there. It was diversity in the passing game. So that's why I'm going with the grade I am.
I'm going to go with a C-, believe, and hear me out here, because I saw in this game, and that's what I was talking about when I said to Dave, I feel that Benny Snell can do everything that James Conner can do. He can do everything that James Conner can do. The only area where he might be lacking is blitz pickup. And I thought that James Conner and the running backs did a good job on blitz pickup. When the Colts did blitz, they only got to Ben one time. That's a big part of this thing. If they can start to, and let's be clear, Bryan brought it up. If the Steelers can start to utilize their running backs out of the backfield, that can be a huge help for this team moving forward. If you look at the teams they would be playing in the postseason, a lot of them like to bring pressure. That can break the back of a defense if you can just swing it outside. You saw it with James Conner. I'm going to give him a C-. They didn't run the ball that many times. I mean, they didn't really give it an opportunity to open up, and I don't think they ever plan to. They'll never tell you this. I don't think the plan going into this game was to run the ball unless they just were trying to kill the clock. You would love to have the opportunity to do that, which they did have. They weren't able to get that. That's a completely different. Well, hey, Dave talked about it in the Stat Geek podcast last week. The weakness of this Colts defense was in their secondary. So that's why they wanted to throw the ball. So I'm going to give him a C. I didn't think the backs were as bad as we all thought. Let's get to some super chats here. Isaac Aguilera, he gives us $5. He says, imagine agreeing with Romo on if you throw it deep, you open up everything underneath. Great win. Need more of this. I don't like to agree with Tony Romo on anything because I can't stand the guy. Steel Dog 88 gives $2. Thoughts on number 49, Marsh. That's Cassius Marsh on special teams. Let me just say this.
He played on defense.
I noticed him. And if I notice him, it's either for good or bad. I noticed him for good reasons. He was the one that had the big hit on I think it was the opening kickoff return of the second half. So there you go. Guys, any thoughts on Marsh while we're talking about it real quick? Bryan?
Yeah, he stood out, and I was like, ooh, how about that? Here's another guy that could be a help.
What about you, Dave?
He didn't kill us.
Thank you, Mike Tomlin. Mark Davison gives us $5 He says, move over Paul Blart. That's Paul Blart, the mall guy. He said, I'm gunning for your job. I was scanning both monitors with the Jets and Steelers with great success. Go Steelers, got it done. He was giving our Slack channels like in-game updates on the Browns and Jets. Obviously, the Jets find a way to beat the Browns, and now all of a sudden the Browns are wondering if they're going to even get into the playoffs, which is incredible. We'll talk about that a little bit down the road here. Let's get to the receiving core. Juju Smith-Schuster, 9 catches for 96 yards. Dave, so close to breaking the 100-yard plateau. Deontay Johnson, that was on 13 targets, by the way. Deontay Johnson, 8 for 75 with a touchdown, 14 targets. Chase Claypool, 4 catches for 54 yards on 6 targets. Eric Ebron and Chase Claypool had that drop on the goal line. That was tough to swallow. Eric Ebron, 5 for 47 on 7 targets. He did have a touchdown. James Conner, as I said earlier, 5 for 45. James Washington, 2 for 20. Vance McDonald gets on the stat sheet, 1 for 5. So they did spread the ball around a lot. Guys, if we're grading the receivers, what grades are you giving them? Go ahead, Bryan.
Can I go with a B- on them? I thought they were playing hard. I mean, it might be maybe it's I took Dave's line. Play hard.
Play hard.
I thought Ben was more of the reason in the first half that the receivers were struggling. I did not see many egregious drops. So I'm going to pump that up to a B. I thought they did a lot of things. Yeah, that drop by Claypool, that was a pretty big deal. And I get it, but I really like this group. And I really think that that you need each and every one of them, but you can get every one of them are hungry enough to step up. And I liked all of them in this game.
All right, Dave, what grade do you give the wide receivers?
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B+ because they stuck with it. Like Bryan said, a lot of the passes just seemed off from Ben Roethlisberger early, and there was still even some off passes occasionally in the second half, but you don't have to complete a pass every time to still move the ball if you're making plays otherwise. And I felt that they didn't, other than the Claypool not pulling in that touchdown. But like Bryan said, I agree. If it doesn't play off in that manner, I don't know if the Steelers get back in the game or not, because it played out the way it did, and I'm just happy for it. So I think they did a great job, especially as the game went on, of when Ben started to do these things, that they didn't let him down.
I'm going to give him a B, and that's kind of status quo right now, but I'll tell you what, and I said this on Twitter, and I said this audibly to whoever was listening. The Steelers receivers were getting visibly frustrated in the first half with the passes. I mean, they were, to me, it was blatant. If I can notice it on television, everyone else can notice it. I mean, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, even Juju Smith-Schuster, Eric Ebron occasions, they're like, what in the heck is going on? Definitely took advantage of the opportunities. It's now 2 weeks in a row we have not been talking about drop passes. I knocked on wood for all those superstitious fans out there. Thank you.
I'm doing it too.
And so that's a good thing. So I think they're heading in the right direction. The receivers were not the issue in this game. Other than the Claypool drop, I thought they played a good game. Ryan O'Toole gives us $2. He said TJ gets put in a sleeper hold and still no flag. What do you say, Dave? They are not calling it on pass plays.
The NFL was not calling holding calls on pass plays.
And only in Steeler Nation will you get Ryan O'Toole's message for $2 and then follow it up with John Knox's $2 for an A for the refs helping us out. So one guy says, they screwed us. The other guy says, well, they actually helped us out. So yeah, there were some questionable calls on both sides for sure. Benjamin Potter gives us $1.99. He said, what do you guys think Tomlin said to Ben at half? I don't think he said anything. I mean, my gosh, you shouldn't. That's not a situation, in my opinion, where a coach needs to give a veteran, a 38-year-old quarterback that's been to 3 Super Bowls. You don't need any pep talk. That's just my personal opinion. Guys, you might disagree and think that he's not going to threaten to bench him either. I mean, come on. Dave, do you think
I know what I would have said to him?
What's that?
I would have said, play hard. No, I would have said just simple. Hey, second half, go show the world who you are.
Yeah, can't get any worse.
Are you this guy that was the way you played in the first half? Is that who you are? Is that Ben Roethlisberger, or are you something else? Are you the guy that led them early in the season to all those wins?
What about you, Bryan? Would you have said anything different if you're Coach T?
I don't think Coach T said a word. No. I think one of his receivers may have yelled at him. And in my head, I think, hey, you call players meetings. You talk to us about being accountable. What about you being accountable? Why do I have that as a scenario? Maybe I watch Varsity Blues way too often, but maybe I'm thinking that it's like, hey, we're doing it too here. So, captain, be the captain. Who knows? That might have not happened. This is scenarios that happen in my little world.
Johnny Moxon. You just got me on Friday Night. I'm sorry, Varsity Blues. You got me on Varsity Blues, man. Now. All right. Anyways, let's get to Eric Askew. He gives $5. That the bigger question is who's more at fault, the offensive line or the running backs? I really don't see many holes for the backs to run through. It's a good segue to how we always finish up the offense by talking about the offensive line. Now, in the past, I've broken it down. Pass blocking and then run game. This time, let's just do it. Let's lump it all together. And again, it's the same old story, same old song and dance, as Aerosmith said. Couldn't run the ball, but they didn't really try to run the ball. Only give up 1 sack. Bryan, what do you grade the offensive line?
I'm going to go with a C because I just don't have enough here. I mean, like I said, running game stunk. That's what everybody else is saying. The passing game stunk at the beginning, but it wasn't because Ben was getting harassed. I mean, I know he was sacked once, but I really don't think he was running for his life. I just thought he was off. So I'm going to let it even it out and say that the pass blocking was maybe a B-. The run blocking was a D-. So let's give it a C.
All right. Dave, you agree, disagree?
That actually is a pretty fair assessment there, Bryan. So if you're looking at the two combined, I mean, the run blocking, they're still not driving off the ball. I was pretty furious at halftime. Jeff can tell you this. I was like, what is going on with this team? They get called soft and they come out and they were playing really soft. They were just playing soft, and just something finally sparked in them to where they started to finally believe again. And it was that, Ben had time to throw the ball down the field. I don't know that he took a lot of time, but I mean, they had that one complete screw up on the blocking scheme with Ben taking the sack and everything. And other than that, he was clean. I mean, he did get hit a few times. So I think Bryan, I like his assessment. I'm just going to say ditto.
I'm going to actually say C+, because the one thing that and this is going back to the super chat question, which is who's at fault in the running game, especially. Dave was there with me today watching the game. How many times and I'm sure I'm not the only person that saw this, did we see whether it was Benny Snell, James Conner? They just don't seem to be following their blocks well. They're not reading each other well. There was a time, and it was a James Conner run, and it was actually this. Actually, I think Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. This was the final Steelers possession where I said if Conner goes north and south and runs right off David DeCastro's hip, he gets a first down, and the Steelers might never give the ball back. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't. He kind of hesitates. He gets tackled. It was like a 3rd and short then, and they don't get it because the next pass was Deontay Johnson. But still, I think sometimes it's the running backs not reading that they don't have the vision at the line of scrimmage. I know that's been a knock I've had on Snell for a long time. So to go back to that question, I would say that it's a lot of the running backs as well as the offensive line. I think a C+ because they did a great job in pass pro today. I thought they gave Ben time. He did it. He had the time to go down the field. And that's a really good defense, by the way, gentlemen. That's a really good defense.
Yes.
Let's not say anything. We haven't said it once. We always want to bash the Steelers offense, but let's also give credit to the Colts defense because they are a really, really good unit. Frank N. Stein. Got him. $4.99 tip. He says, the incredible Ben. Don't make Ben angry. You won't like him when he's angry. I wish that was the case. I really do. But he should have been angry enough after the last 3/4 weeks. So, all right. Here's what's going to happen. If you're watching live on YouTube or on Facebook, you're going to stay here because we're not going anywhere. But if you're listening on our audio platforms, which is anywhere where you can get your podcast, if you're a podcast listener, go wherever you can find them. Search Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. You'll find us. Follow and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a thing. We have a lot more content than what you hear right now. If you're listening on the audio side, go over to part 2. We'll be right back. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, we're not going anywhere. Stay tuned. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the Steelers Post-Game Podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined with our podcast producer, Bryan Anthony Davis, and the other co-editor, Dave Schofield, as we break down the Steelers' unbelievable come-from-behind win, 28-24 at Heinz Field in Week 16. It clinches the AFC North, and a lot of other stuff could go right in the next coming weeks. We're going to talk about Week 17 ad nauseum this week as we lead up to that regular season finale in Cleveland. A lot of news will be coming out with whether the Steelers are going to rest players, things like that. But as we always do, this is this part of the show where we talk about the defense. We talked about the offense earlier. Let's get to this super chat first before we get started. Matthew gives us $5 with the Browns players in COVID protocol. Are they able to come back next week? It'll still be within the 10-day window. This is, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, this was the change to the protocol that everyone was talking about. And that was the fact that even if they're asymptomatic, the NFL used to differentiate between symptomatic and asymptomatic carriers. The only thing is that if these players were put on the list, not because they test positive, but because they were high-risk contacts, they should be able to come back before the game in Week 17. But if those players test positive, there is no way that they play in that 10-day window. So keep that in mind. Dave, did I get that right, you think?
All right. I'm not exactly sure if you got it exactly right. No matter what, if you have a positive test, it's 10 days.
Right, but I don't think those players that missed on
But
Cleveland,
You're talking
they were
about
high-risk contacts.
close contacts.
Yeah.
Close contact, I don't think is the mandatory 10 days. That's the thing that you have to look at. That I'm not exactly sure for sure.
And at this time, honestly, real quick, let's start this part of the show off this way. If you're Mike Tomlin, how do you handle the game next week in Week 17? Now, I know that the Bills still have to play, but it looks like the worst the Steelers can do, actually it is the worst that they can do, is the 3 seed. Maybe they bump up ahead of the Bills. I believe if the Bills were to lose. But guys, how do you handle Week 17? Bryan, we'll go with you.
Well, it's interesting because if you're asking Mike Tomlin, I could hear him right now on his press conference. He's going to say, hey, we don't care who we play. We're just going to take whoever's dealt to us. I don't really think that you're going to make a decision based on your opponent. I really think the decision is going to be made whether they want to take the bye week back. I think they need to take the bye week back next week because if it's me, I'm thinking need to rest these guys and we're professionals enough to take on whoever is thrown at us on the playoff schedule. So I think you've got to take the bye.
Let's take it a step further. If you're going to take the bye, who do you rest? We know Ben. We know you're going to rest Ben. Is there anyone else? And if so, who?
I rest TJ.
Okay. Anyone else?
And I rest maybe Hayden. I rest maybe Hayward. I'm resting. There's hardly any linemen to rest, but I rest the guys that you feel that might. I don't want to use the word fragile, but the guys that you feel that would benefit the most by being refreshed by a week off.
Someone like Pouncey.
Yeah, I think a Pouncey would be off. I remember. I'm going back to 1994 here when they had a great season, and the final week of the season, Kevin Green could have gotten the sack record, and they rested Kevin Green, Neil O'Donnell. They rested huge starters, like 4 or 5 huge starters in that game, and almost beat San Diego. They lost by 3, and San Diego was a playoff team that year too, but they just did not need that victory, and it was a situation where you don't care about who you play. You care about who you're playing. When I say who you're playing, who is dressing for the black and gold.
Okay. That's a good point. Dave, do you agree with that sentiment? You sit players? If so, who?
If you can't sit that many because you got to have players to sit players. I mean, there's going to be guys that even if you want to sit them, you're going to probably dress them in case of emergency.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so let's be realistic. Use your analytical brain here. What are some reasonable players that the Steelers could rest in Week 17 we know Ben? That's obvious.
Okay, Ben, because you just have Ben inactive and you have Dobbs active. You can bring up 2 players off the practice squad if you really want to cover anything from any given position. I would love to say, and you might want to do that on the offensive line. Might be where that is. It might be. I would prefer to on the offensive line if I could. I would prefer to rest Pouncey, DeCastro, and Villanueva, but not fully rest. But at least one of them, if not 2 of them, are going to have to be active and backups just in case.
So you're going to have to re-sign Derwin Gray to get him in there because J.C. Hassenauer would be at center. Who's going to – and you would say that
Well, first of all, you got to get Gray onto the practice squad. I don't know. I mean, because you can't just re-sign him. You want to have to drop someone. That's where it gets really tricky. That I'm going to have to
that's what I'm talking about.
Get through it, but not too much.
What about on the
defense? The defense, who I would be resting, would be Hayward and probably Hayden. That's probably it. I mean, I would love to get Vince Williams a game off because I felt that he just seemed kind of off, but he might just need some playing time. But it would be nice to get some other linebackers in there where he didn't have to play as many snaps.
I might sit Minka. You have Sean Davis. You could put him back there. He can play the position. I might sit Minka because he's a very crucial part of the defense.
Yeah.
How fitting would it be possibly if Mason Rudolph starts the game in Week 17 and knocks the Browns out of the playoffs if they win the game? I mean, that would be poetic justice at its finest.
Yeah. But most importantly, I think we would all agree that it would be really nice to just rest Randy Fiedner.
All right. That's awesome.
Wait, I think I just clicked back over onto the screen with you guys. I haven't been watching you all the whole time. I've been looking up stats, and I saw someone said that in there after I said that. So I have to give credit. Who was that? Porta? Yeah. Portna Quenba said that.
There you go.
Before I said it. So very good.
Steel Dog 88 gives us $5 that if Rudolph plays next game, will this be his audition to stay when his contract is due next season? That's something a lot of people are forgetting, is that Mason Rudolph will be going into his final year of his contract next year. And yeah, at this point in his career, every time he can step on the field is a chance for him to prove himself. It's a chance for him to show what he's capable of, whether that's with the Steelers or whether that's with someone else. So yeah, absolutely. He would be hoping to play extremely well. My melanated scope gives us $4.99. Beat the Browns and Ravens, likely get in. I don't know, y'all. I'd rather have the Brownies in the playoffs. Yeah, all the Ravens have to do is win, and they're in. They're already the team right now that's not in is the Colts. Yeah. No, you're right.
By losing to the Steelers,
the Ravens go to the Bengals next week, I believe.
Yes.
So,
the Bengals put up some points today.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing about this whole thing, I was telling people all week, if you're a Ravens fan, you're rooting for the Steelers this week.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Ravens rooting guide if I would have done. And people are like, oh, I can't root for the Steelers. Like, come on. Yeah, you have to.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. The Ravens are looking good, but they're a talented team. This isn't surprising to anyone that's been paying attention. So we'll see. Good discussion there to see, talk about the potential of next week. We'll talk about that on all our shows this week, I'm sure, leading up to, especially after Mike Tomlin, his press conference on Tuesday, when I guarantee you, he refused to answer the question in his post-game press conference. He said, we're going to enjoy our hats and T-shirts tonight. We'll worry about that tomorrow. So he did not answer that question. Now, let's get to the defensive side of the football, shall we? Let's talk about the rushing defense. And this is, again, kind of like the tale of two halves, where you had Jonathan Taylor, who had 18 carries for 74 yards, 4.1 average, 2 touchdowns. He had an 18-yard long. Nyheim Hines had 8 carries for 44 yards. Ashton Doolin had 1 for 8, and Jacoby Brissett had a quarterback sneak for 1. The Steelers, they struggled in the first half stopping the run, and then shockingly, I think you would all agree with me that the Colts got away from the run in the second half. They started to throw the ball more. This is like Houston Texans 2.0. This is exactly what we talked about in the Houston game when the Steelers came back from that deficit and beat the Texans at home. So, guys, how do you grade the rush defense? Bryan, we'll start with you.
I'm going to give him a B-. I'm going to treat this the same way that I treated Ben, because Jonathan Taylor was amazing in the first half. Jonathan Taylor became Home Improvement's Jonathan Taylor Thomas in the second half and was not a factor. And if he could have said "Heidi ho, neighbor," and he could have taken the game apart for the Steelers, and they could have done that, because look, that first drive where they got the field goal, where thank goodness TJ Watt got in there for the sack, and that was a big deal, holding them to the field goal there. But they took off 5 or 6 minutes off the clock, and they were draining the clock with these guys, Hines and Taylor. I was going to call him Thomas and Taylor. So, with that being said, I've got to say that they buckled down. They figured out how to do it. So let's give them a B- with the arrow pointing upward.
I can't. We had 2 home improvement references there in that grading sequence with JTT and then the Heidi Ho. So, Dave, if you could grade the run defense without referencing that 1990 sitcom, that would be great. Dave, what grade do you give the rush defense?
I like Bryan's of B-, and I think really it I don't think that they did that great at stopping the run. I just, like you said, I can't believe the Colts got away from it. Here, listen to these numbers. In the first half, the Colts had 77 yards on 20 rushing attempts. And in the second half, they had 50 yards on 8 rushing attempts. They only ran the ball 8 times in the second half.
Incredible.
And they still ran it well. They ran it for 50 yards. I think the play that changed everything was when the Steelers did not score the touchdown. The Colts went to run the ball out the first time on the 2-yard line, and they got caught for a 1-yard loss. I mean, how many times did they run the ball after that the rest of the game? I don't know. But that completely changed that drive, and the Steelers getting the ball back where they did, and a lot of different things. So that was a really big play of a really big rush where the Steelers made the play, and it really changed the game.
I'm going to give him a D because I felt that it was that bad. And the only reason that it's not more of a talking point at this time is because they got away from it. It's not because the Steelers stopped them. I still feel like if the Colts in the second half would have said, we are just going to continue to run it right down their throat, it really felt like his average was not 5. But Jonathan Taylor at 4.1, it felt like he was getting 5 yards a carry. It felt like every time he touched the ball, just give him 5. And so I was really disappointed in the run defense. Alex Highsmith, he's a rookie. I get it. He's also struggling in run defense. His prowess seems to be getting after the quarterback in terms of the skill set that he has. But I said it to Dave early on in the game. They are putting a tackle over top of Highsmith every time, and they're running it on his side because they want to get away from TJ Watt. Why they got away from it, I have no idea. I don't think it was the Steelers' rush defense making adjustments. It was all because the Colts, stopped doing what was working. I don't know why. Freaky MC gives us $5. Says Mason with the opportunity to shut the Browns out of the playoff and shut the haters up. Go get him number 2. Well, we'll see. We'll see. If he plays next week, I might have to wear the jersey. I might have to wear my Mason Rudolph jersey. Hey, I don't know. All right, let's go to the next. Let's go to the pass rush. Phillip Rivers. He throws 22 for 35 for 270. He was sacked 5 times for 32 yards. Let's talk about who registered sacks. Avery Williamson had 1, also had 2 tackles for loss and 1 quarterback hit. Cameron Hayward was credited with 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. TJ Watt, 2 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. Stephon Tuitt with 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss and 2 quarterback hits. I felt like maybe Dave and I were talking, maybe they would give a half of that to Watt, that Tuitt sack. I don't know.
I thought so.
Yeah, 5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. Guys, how do you grade the Steelers pass rush in this game? Brian, go with you.
I'm giving them an A, and I don't care who was active for the Colts as far as tackles. At the end of that game, Highsmith, who was having the problems against the run, he had a very big play in there too. So they were getting after the quarterback. 5 sacks is what we've been hoping for a long, long time. And once again, it doesn't matter who they're trucking out there because we've seen backups playing at the tackle position in the last month. The Steelers have not been able to get to the quarterback. They did again. That's a big deal to me. If I haven't graded them already, I'm going to say A.
All right, Dave.
I'm going A because there was a lot more to it than this. Speaking of Tuitt, he was nowhere to be seen in the first half and then started making plays in the second half. Did he get his sack in the first half though? I can't remember, but it was one of those. I think it was in this. That's when he started to wake up. I can't remember exactly where it came, but you also got to remember this pass rush made the difference in this game because not only was one of those sacks for TJ Watt a sack, it was a forced fumble, which set the Steelers up on a 3. I'm pretty sure it was a 3-yard drive. If not, it might have been 4. Okay, that's where they were set up. And the difference is, look at this. The Steelers scored 21 in the second half. The Colts scored 21 in the first half. The difference was the Steelers had 7 in the first half compared to the Colts 3 in the second half. And the only reason they had that 7 was because the defense set them up for it. That's how bad the offense was in the first half. They even needed help with a penalty in order to get that touchdown. But that was set up on the great pass rush, and it was affecting Rivers the whole game. You can't I don't think there was a single time in the second half you could say that the pass rush wasn't affecting what was going on in the decisions that had to be made.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm going to give them an A. I thought that they did a great job, and they did here's why I give them an A. They did what they should have done against 2 tackles that were not their starting tackles. We've talked about this ad nauseum against teams that struggle to protect the quarterback, and the Steelers don't get home. They don't get the sacks that we all expect them to. On the Steelers preview, I'll say over under on Steelers sacks. We'll go with 4.5, and Brian will say they're going to have 7 or they're going to have 8. What do they end up with, like 2 or 3? This was a game against a team that does a good job protecting the quarterback. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. The Colts had only given up the second lowest sack totals, only second to the Steelers.
Yes, I can even give you that exact number.
I don't need to know.
Yeah, but it was low. Who cares? I know they were missing both starting tackles.
16,
that's part of the
16 coming into this week.
That's part of the reason. Yeah, then that is correct. I knew 12 was one of the numbers. I couldn't remember if that was the Steelers.
That was the Steelers, yeah.
So, yes, it was 2 different tackles, but all you can do is play against the players you're lined up against. I remember my bold prediction was that the Steelers weren't going to get any. They were going to end the streak.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was before either of the tackles was out. So, needless to say, I didn't feel – and I told you guys I hope that was wrong on that one.
You're right.
Yeah, anytime you look at this, basically a quarter of the sacks the Colts have given up on the year was to the Pittsburgh Steelers in one game. That's
pretty impressive. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So I give him an A, absolutely. Canadian Curtin gave us 5 Canuck bucks and didn't include the question. So this was the next comment. I assume it's what it was. It's someone reminded BTR, that's Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, that he is the best quarterback drafted in 2004. Enough said. He's referring to Mr. Phillip Rivers, my arch nemesis.
I love that you have an arch nemesis. You guys have combined 500 children, and you hate the guy. I don't understand it.
He's such a crybaby. I mean, you saw it on that pass on the sideline. He's over there whining. Gosh, there's something about his face. I want to punch him right in the side.
He should play for Harbs.
He and Harbs on the sideline together would be like, my head would explode. I couldn't take it. All right, let's go down to the secondary. The Steelers secondary. So again, Phillip Rivers, 22 of 35, 270 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The receiving core, Zach Pascal had 3 catches for 64 yards, that 42-yard touchdown. T.Y. Hilton, 3 for 60. And boy, did T.Y. Hilton get away with that defensive pass interference call on Steven Nelson when Nelson looked like he came up with an interception. I don't know, guys. Real quick, Brian, I know Dave agrees with me because he was in my house watching the game. That was as much offensive pass interference as it was defensive pass interference. You agree?
Absolutely. He's a wily veteran. He knows how to do that stuff.
Wily.
I can't say it was a bad call, but it was
a good one either.
It was, yeah. They would have the better call in that situation because of how much they were fighting was to not throw the flag. And I'll be honest with you, in my opinion, if that's not 4th down, if that's 2nd down, they probably let it go.
You're probably right. And it shouldn't matter. Anyways, I digress. It shouldn't matter. Michael Pittman Jr. had 3 catches for 38 yards. Mo Ali Cox had 1 catch for 20. Naheem Hines, 5 for 20. Trey Burton, 3 for 18. They completed passes to 7 different receivers. Looking at the Steelers side of things, you look at the secondary, Minka Fitzpatrick had 8 tackles with 1 pass defense. Steven Nelson, 6 tackles. Joe Hayden did get burned on that Pascal touchdown. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly.
No, you're right.
Mike Hilton had a big game, 4 tackles, 2 solo, 2 pass defenses. He had the fumble recovery, and he also had the interception. So take that for what it's worth. Guys, let's grade out this. This is a tough grade for me. Grade out the Steelers secondary. Brian, go ahead.
I feel like I'm riding the B- train a whole heck of a lot because that Zach Pascal thing was completely egregious. They did not look to be on point in the first half, but I thought they really put it together in the second half, and I thought they were good in the second half. And you're right about that call on Nelson. That was a whole bunch of hooey, and I really thought you had a good effort from them.
Dave?
All right, you're going to get a Dave answer. You said no, because you didn't say the pass defense. You said the secondary. And for me, the secondary is going to get an A-. The only thing keeping them back was that long touchdown that Hayden gave up, which was those guys were out on an island out there because they sent a big blitz on that play and they didn't get home. So, but you still got to be right there. It wasn't like he was beat bad, but he was beat enough to give up the touchdown. The secondary in the passing game, I think, did a good job. The deficiency lies in they were constantly throwing, whether in the zone or even if they were the few times they were in man, they were constantly looking for the Williams or Williamson matchup out there and constantly looking for guys, finding holes in that one. I really wish Steven Nelson could keep his feet a little bit better at times. There was a couple times where it's funny you say, I said, oh, he pushed off. And then we watched the replay. I said, he crossed his feet over and tripped on his own feet. You know, you got to not cross your feet. But I thought they did a great job. We were talking about, Jeff, we wanted them to pass the ball. We wanted to pass the ball because we felt between the Steelers secondary and the pass rush, good things would happen for the Steelers defense. The one place they're lacking is those coverage linebackers.
You're right. And so when you do talk about when you bring in the linebackers, that definitely does muddy the water a little bit. So I'm going to give them a B. I thought it was a good game and they made the plays when necessary. And I think, gosh, Minka Fitzpatrick, he doesn't drop those plays in the fourth quarter in that last drive where the Colts are driving like that ball, like Minka doesn't miss those too many times. We'll put it that way, but still a good job. I thought the defense stood tall and they needed to talk about, again, this was a game. I feel like we've said this a million times this season, the tale of two halves. You know, something's going so good the 1 week or one half, and then it's completely flipped the script. So we'll get to that. Black and Gold Goggles gives us $4.99. Says, can we start wrapping up our tackles? Start throwing instead, stop throwing the shoulder. It cost us a touchdown with Taylor today and will hurt us long term. Well, I do think a lot of that is Jonathan Taylor is tough to bring down. He's not a guy that's going to get brought down by one tackle. He's running hard. I told Dave when we were watching Kansas, the Steelers have no one that can do that. The way that he was eluding tacklers in the backfield, very, very good running back. He's going to be good for a long time. Good, Bryan.
If you checked out the Steelers pregame show the other day, Coach Kevin Smith had an opportunity to scout Taylor when he was in high school, and because he was scouting another player, another team, and got to watch him play in New Jersey, and he said he was a man among boys in high school, and he is probably one of the toughest that he's seen as far as tackling that 230-pound beast.
Yeah. Dave, anything to add?
I thought he ran hard.
Yeah.
And honestly, just one thing that I noticed, and I'm going to say, I had to be able to say it, is that I'm going to say, whether it be rust or still from getting over COVID, Vince Williams does not usually give up 1 to 2 yards of letting the runner fall forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was Vince coming on his way back, or even more of a testament to Taylor. I can't break that down for sure, but it was one of those two things.
He did miss 2 games like that. That's something. And these weren't like those weird weeks. Like he missed 2 games. I mean, he was clearly not right. But yeah, you're probably right. I do want to bring this up. Let's grade the coaching staff for a second, just as a whole. We can nitpick a little bit, but Jerry Cherryband, who is a great friend of the show, if you listen to our audio podcast, it's his music that leads in everything except for Michael Beck's show, that crazy Canuck. I don't know where he gets his stuff. But still, it's the Jerry Cherryband. And so when he chimes in, I like to show him some love. He says, dude, did we talk about the horrible time management at the end of the half? He's talking about the first half when the Steelers ended up going into the locker room, holding on to a timeout. I'm going to let Dave go first here. Dave, if you're going to grade the coaching staff, and if you want to dive into that time management, you can at this time. How do you grade the coaches after this Week 16 game?
Well, to talk specifically about that time management real quick, they got out-coached on that one. The reason they got out-coached with the time management is, what did the Colts do? The clock was running, and what was it, like 40 seconds about? I don't know. And they run to the line like they're going to go quick. And it's what, 3rd and 18? Mm-hmm. So they run to the line like they're trying to go quick. And the Steelers are like, all right, we got to be ready. And then they sat there and wasted all that time to let the clock run down. So they kind of bluffed the Steelers into thinking they were going to go quick. And when they didn't use the timeout, and it cost them plenty of time. They probably could have had enough time to at least get a field goal attempt there, because they were just a little bit too far out. So that one, they kind of got out coached. I felt whenever the team comes out with the same offensive script, offensively, I mean, 1, it's not good plays. And 2, if you're going to execute your scripted plays that poorly, then why are they your scripted plays? The first 2 plays of the game, they run quick slants, and Ben Roethlisberger throws the ball at guys' ankles. And people are like, well, hit their hands, but they were reaching down at the ground, not even diving forward, reaching down at their ankles. That's not an easy play to do on a quick slant. And if they do make that catch, they can't keep running with it. So I don't know how much of that I'm going to put on coaching, rather than there was times where they just didn't purely execute. I thought the Steelers coaching-wise on defense did well.
Bryan Anthony Davis.
For the most part, first of all, Dave, absolutely correct. For the most part, I thought the second half was they adjusted, and that's coaching adjustments. So I'm really happy about that. I thought it was the same old Steelers in the first half. When I say same old Steelers of the last 4 weeks, and I hated it. So I'm going to go ahead and say B- again, and just ride that train until it crashes. But I got to tell you that coaching, I don't care if Rivers, bluffed them. All of a sudden you got to think, oh, wait, he's bluffing us. Time out. And it wasn't even done. And you had 3 at your disposal. I mean, it's just like, and he's laughing about it, just like they got laughed at by Alex Smith going, I pulled the wool over their eyes. At the end of halves, you have quarterbacks walking off laughing at you. Now, I know that wasn't the coaching staff's fault with the Washington game. I know. But it's just, there's just these little things that keep on popping up that are bugging me. And they get a B- because, hey, forget about it. They won. And that's the big thing. But that's the kind of stuff that could kill you going into the playoffs.
And can I say one other thing about that?
Sure.
That Jeff will bring up. You've got to try to do something there, knowing that the Colts were getting the ball to come out of halftime. If you're getting the ball to come out of halftime, I understand playing it that way, or the way you were playing offensively. You weren't. And that makes a big difference.
I learn a lot about the game of football, not so much by watching the Steelers, but also the opponent. And what you saw, especially in the first half, you saw an offensive team that is very well coached. And their head coach, Frank Reich, is a very good offensive-minded coordinator and a coach. He's proven it wherever he's gone. You saw the Colts dictate what they did to the opposition. In the Steelers, I am still waiting for their offense to be able to do the same. And here's the thing. They have the team that can do that. Do they need to run the ball better? Yes. But from an offensive passing standpoint, I feel like they just need to be able to be willing to mix it up more. What did you see in the second half? You saw them mixing it up more. You saw shots down the field. You saw unique play designs. You saw them throwing to James Conner out of the backfield. You saw them running some screen plays. That's the creativity and we'll call it, we're just mixing it up. It's incredible to me how when you see other teams and you're like, man, how does it look so easy? Because it never looks easy for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense ever. And I mean ever. I'm going to give the coaches a C+ this week because that first half was just absolutely dreadful on both sides of the football. The Canadian Curtain gives us another $5 Canuck bucks. With Bud not being on a franchise tag next year, how much will it cost to sign number 28? That's Mike Hilton long term. I think it's a must. He's the best slot corner in the AFC. I don't want to dive too much into like the free agent stuff because we're going to talk about that when the season's over a lot. But guys, priorities, is Mike Hilton one of them? Bryan, go with you first.
He could be, or they might put their money in the arms of a guy like Cam Sutton too. I think it would be a priority. It just depends on the market and what the greedy guys with a lot of cap room are willing to throw at a guy.
Dave?
Yeah, and which is crazy because we say, well, what's the cap situation? Well, with the NFL announcing that they're going forward with 17 games next year is the plan, which means new TV deals, which could help save the salary cap somewhere it's not as low. And that sounds great for the Steelers. But here's the other thing. That means those other teams that would want to try to lure them away, they're going to have more money to do that too. In essence, it's really going to even itself out. I could see someone throwing a lot of money at Hilton, but frankly, if you're looking at Sutton, Hilton, Dupree, if I could only pick one of them to keep, believe it or not, I'm going Mike Hilton right now, based on this season. And
if you can afford him, I think you're absolutely right. And if you can get a team-friendly deal, I think he would probably like to stay. I think he loves the Steelers. They were obviously the team that gave him a chance. But we'll see. John Knox gives us $5. It's, to me, Tomlin was fine not giving the ball back to the offense with 50-ish seconds left. They hadn't shown they could do anything all first half. And he's not wrong. And maybe that is – I'm sure Tomlin will be asked about that in his press conference on Tuesday, and will absolutely be talking about that a lot. Alfred gives us $1.99. He said Canada called plays. It's low-key till the offseason. I don't know about that. We'll see. Maybe. They were running some up-tempo stuff. It might have been more bad. They were. It could have been. All right, let's do some final thoughts here before we call it a show. Bryan, we'll start with you.
All right. Once again, we talked about it earlier in the show at the beginning. This is the 45th anniversary of the first terrible towel when Myron, they weren't actual terrible towels at that point. They were towels, and it was against the Colts on December 27th, 1975. And it was so fitting that this was the anniversary, and it's actually sad that there were none in the stands because there weren't fans in the stands. But
that place would have been rocking, Bryan.
Oh,
it would have been rocking.
Would have been rocking.
Oh, it would have been crazy. And so that leads to my next point. My next point is this. If this had been a playoff game, this would have been one of the greatest games in Steeler history because we would be talking about this comeback forever. So I want you to think about that. We have seen games this season. We saw the Tennessee game where they came out rocking and they barely won that game at the end. I would much rather you have a situation where the Steelers start off slow, and at the end of that game, even when they were still down by 10 points, I'm like, all right, I think they've got this. I wasn't thinking that at halftime, but you think they got this. And it just seemed like the Steelers we were waiting for. This is a complete reawakening. This is, confidence is back. This is the kind of win that you take back into that locker room and you say, see, fellas, I told you. You gotta believe. And now, this is what you can do. Let's do it for a full 60 going forward. And then you have got a completely new season. It seems like they woke up, and it seems like the script flipped, and that is the name of this podcast, because they flipped the script, finally.
Dave, final thoughts. Go ahead.
Did we miss this one?
What's that?
This was earlier. This live chat or super chat?
No, I guess I did. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, this was $4.99 from Jeremy Smith. He said, how about the Steelers getting called for block in the back when they were punting? Make it make sense.
I wish I could.
I never saw the actual call because I'm like, they said that's on the Steelers, and we're sitting there saying something about it. I'm like, I guess we'll see if they pointed the wrong way when they came back, and they said it was on the Steelers, but they didn't show it. More than likely, that meant when the team was rushing that they probably maybe block someone from behind as they were rushing in. I can't figure out any other thing to make it make sense. I would have to watch it over again. My final thought, or did you want to get other super chats that you have coming up?
Well, let's do this. Matt Shue gives us 13.
He's got to do it. I'm glad he did.
He says, let's do it again. 13-03 for 13-3 on to the Browns. Great team win. Let's keep the momentum going. I'll say it again. Everyone relax. Happy New Year's, BTSC fam. Let's start 2021 with a W and smash in the playoffs. I love that. Positive thinking, my friend. I appreciate that. And Happy New Year to you too. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh my, so many final thoughts about this game. When the Steelers got to within 3, that's when I didn't even want to say it to Jeff. And I was still nervous, but at that point I felt that they were going to win the game. But then part of me with it, when they took the lead, I'm like, I don't think they're going to relinquish this here. I think they're going to hold on. It just felt different for some reason. I felt this team come alive. I felt they were dead. They felt like they had no fire. I'm like, these are grown men playing a grown man's game, and they're out there playing soft. They were playing soft in that first half. And I'm like, what is it going to take for this team to wake up? Because I at that point, we all probably felt that the season was done. They were going to lose out, do nothing in the playoffs, be done. And the softness disappeared. It disappeared in that second half. So this is all about moving forward. Who are we going to see? I know part of me was like, rest God for the playoffs. Part of me wants to be like, keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. But I don't want guys to get hurt either. So that's one thing. But we want to know, what kind of team are we going to see in the postseason? Are we going to see the first half team from this week or the second half team? Are they going to come out and look like they're soft and just not together, or are they going to go out there and put it away? All I know was that it had been since the month of November since we saw the Steelers playing what I would call adequate football, and they came back in a big way in this half year to finish out this 2020. So let's roll this into January and let's get it done.
Absolutely. Kathy Ford gives us $5. Says, great show, great win. See you with the Hangover guys tomorrow. Thank you, Kathy, very much. For me, simple. This was a special win for a lot of reasons. On a day that they had a moment of silence for Kevin Green before the game, for the Steelers to come out and come from behind, a part of me, if I closed my eyes and thought you would see 91 out there with the long hair, the blonde hair flowing out of the back of the helmet, raging, just pumping his fist, getting the fans jacked up on the sidelines. It would have been a great Kevin Green type game. at Heinz Field, but also is important because I got to watch the game with my dad. I haven't watched a game with him in a long time. He was in for the holidays. I know he came over here and they picked this weekend because of this game. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this can't happen. Like, I haven't watched a game with my dad or my brother in years. This can't be the way that they play. And they come from behind. It was a great memory. So I know that's not like super X's and O's about the Steelers moving forward. This was a great win. Enjoy the win. That's what I'm going to say. Enjoy the win because hey, go back to the last 3 weeks. Remember what the alternative was. So the Steelers clinched the AFC North. There's a lot to talk about, and we will be breaking it down at all this week on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll get to the super chats here. Alfred gives us another $1.99. Said only takeaway when Ben turns it on, we're good. Let's try to keep that on. And then thanks, Mean Joe, $5. It's Steelers King of the North yet again. Woohoo. Colts, one of the best O-lines, gives the defense a bit of a pass. But how to fix the O-line for the playoffs? It's $1 million question. Let's see if they can figure it out. Make sure you follow us on our podcast platform. Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you search Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe or follow, do whatever you have to do so that you don't miss a thing. As for the Bryan and Dave, the Steelers win 12-3. We'll be back next week after another game, AFC North action to finish up the regular season. Steelers at Browns. Should be a 1:00 game. I'd be shocked if they move it. But stay tuned. We'll see you. Steelers win. Feels good. Take it easy.